So what if I were to tell you that making that impact, life, success, all of those things that we experience aren't so much about what happens to you. It ultimately becomes about learning how to create that optimal foundation for incredible and even impossible things to occur. What if I were to tell you that we experience those feelings not because of something we're not, but more because of something that we never allow ourselves to be? I'm talking about the things that we can control, but that we've trained to be completely oblivious to. So the real question that we are here to answer today is, are we deliberately choosing who we show up being? Are we the sovereign of how we define ourselves? And if not, how's it working? And what has it been costing us? Could it be costing us that epic destiny that we often strive our entire life chasing, yearning for, simply because we don't know who we are? Well, we're here to change that today. We're here to answer that question. Are we in control of how we experience our life? Or are the experiences of our life controlling us? And it is deciding, making that commitment to step forward, saying, today I wake up as the frickin' epic version of myself, whatever that looks like to me today. Does that make sense? Who's with me? All right. Every single one of you, from the moment you are born, is the creator of a unique story that makes you not only irreplaceable, but of tremendous value to someone else who is at a different point in their story. True or true? How many times have you been in the midst of what might feel like the worst day of your life, and someone shares a story with you? Someone says, did you know that Denzel Washington never got a leading role in Hollywood until he was 56 years old? And you go, whoa, maybe there's hope for me then. Move over Brad Pitt, right? I want you to imagine that it's February 19th, 2016. And you are in a raft pulling into this beautiful grotto in Colombia, South America. Yes, right? The sky is blue, the water is crystal clear, and everywhere you look are these majestic cliffs and mountains and trees. It is idyllic. Now, in one of the rafts, next to you in the very front, is this beautiful young woman with this smile that just lights up the universe. Now, as irony tends to happen, she is the daredevil in the group. In fact, when your boats pull up to the cliff, boosh, she is in the water and already swimming up that very precarious cliff to climb up and get to the ledge, where what do you think she's going to do? Oh yes, so she's starting up this precarious ledge. This what? Precarious ledge, right? Climbing bit by bit up this ledge, and now everybody has to jump out and follow her. Okay. So yes, what do you think she did? She jumped in the water. So as soon as her head bops back up, she says, "Jump! This is freaking awesome." So believe it or not, every single one of you and the tourists, even the ones who consider themselves terrified of heights, take that plunge. Well, once you've done it once, you kind of want to do it again, don't you? So everyone began this really fast swim back to the ledge to start climbing up and up again. This is what it felt like to be truly alive, pure bliss. Until, pop, just like that, it wasn't. Because you see, in that moment, in the midst of all that fun, one single boulder broke off the side of that mountain and came plummeting down toward this group of tourists. What moments before had been calm broke into total chaos as everyone scrambled to get out of the way of this falling boulder. Fortunately, everyone made it to safety, except for one, that beautiful young woman who had been the daredevil. And everyone else watched in horror as this terrible rock made a direct hit right in the middle of her forehead and knocked her off the cliff onto the rocks below. In case you haven't guessed, that beautiful young girl was my daughter, Skylar. And that video here was literally taken minutes before the boulder fell. However, at 3:15 in the afternoon, the phone rang, and it was this young woman, Dana, saying, "I don't know how to tell you this, but Skylar's been in a terrible accident." And of course, first words out of my mouth were, "Is she okay?" What I learned in that next moment is sometimes the lack of words says more than any words that someone could share with you. All I heard was a pause and a sigh. And I will tell you, in that moment, I will be very transparent and vulnerable, and I will tell you, do you know what the first thought was? I'm not worthy of this. I'm not a good enough mom to be this. She deserves someone so much better. I have no idea what to do. In fact, I don't even know if I have enough money to give her what she needs right now. Why did she end up with me? Now, I can tell you that's a really horrible thing to be your first thought, other than, of course, hoping that everything is okay for your daughter. So what I learned was that this young woman had no idea where they were, other than Colombia. They had somehow managed to find a hospital that had an ICU, because not all of them in Colombia do, and that the doctors were working tirelessly to at least keep my daughter alive so I could come down and make it there in time to be able to say a final goodbye. So there I was on this plane with my other daughter. My son was staying stateside. And I don't have to probably explain that I was in a turbulence of just about every negative emotion you can possibly imagine. Anger, grief, despair, rage, Why frickin' us? What did we do? Weren't we good enough? Why pick on us? But what I had to come to realize is that by far, the worst emotion that I was feeling in that moment was feeling powerless to help my daughter. And yet, I thought about this. So that boulder had cracked open my daughter's skull, exposing the brain, crushed her lungs, fractured her spine, fractured both scapula, snapped her right thigh, and pulverized her left ankle. I learned later that 4 of the injuries that she had were almost always fatal, individually. Forget about when you put all 4 of them together. So it was a formidable, epic boulder that this medical team was facing. And so I realized that ironically, all of the terrible things that I had lived through before, I'd been in an abusive marriage, you name it. I'd lived in financial terror. I had practiced at being resilient. So what it had done, though, is caused me to study. How do those human beings who face these insurmountable challenges and emerge as bigger, bolder versions of themselves, how do they do it? And in every single case, it was the inner game. And so I began studying and studying and studying. So now I had a choice to make. I realized there had to be a way to get my power back. Because of everything my daughter needed, she didn't need me to be the second victim to this boulder. She needed me to discover what that epic version of myself could look like, even if I didn't know if I'd ever seen that version of myself before. That's one thing I could give her. But it would take me being proactive, and I had to toss aside blame. And that includes blame of that frickin' boulder. Why did I have to toss aside blame? Because here's one thing that that boulder taught me, is that when we blame, when we talk about our reasons and we refuse to forgive, which can feel pretty freaking impossible at times, what we are saying to ourselves, to the universe, if you're religious, to God, you're saying, this thing, this person, this experience, I'm going to give the honor of having so much power over me and my destiny that I promise I will never let this wound heal. Never. So, was I going to let this boulder not only rob me of this, but rob her legacy? Was I going to give this boulder the power to make me go forward in my life, defining myself primarily as the mother of a child who'd been tragically killed by a boulder? Not on my watch. The other option was to say, I can step forward. I can carry on this legacy. I can take this torch if need be, if that is our destiny, and I will step forward eternally as the mother of a child who in just 22 years made a powerful, positive impact on this planet. Do I hear a booyah? Booyah. when we're bumping up against something, even if it's just self-doubt, there are 3 questions you should always be asking yourself. The first, what can I control? What can I control? I certainly couldn't control the boulder. The second is, what can my mind believe? Because your mind has to be able to believe it. It's the Henry Ford saying, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. Right? So what can my mind believe? And here's the most important question of them all, because this is what can change everything. And that question is, what am I assuming that is not necessarily true? So the assumption here is, just because there was no medical precedent for my daughter to survive, have miracles ever happened?
Of course they have.
All the time, right? So I began to look at the language of my inner game, because guess what? Our language, if you can start paying attention to your language, the language is our symptoms of our inner game, just in the same way a runny nose might be a symptom of a cold. The words you choose are symptomatic of what you believe to be truth right here, right now. So for example, when I said to myself, my biggest challenge right now is finding a way to get my power back from my daughter, clearly there's some powerful words in that sentence, right? Challenge. When you think of challenge, it's a heavy word, because all of our words come with invisible stories attached to them. In that context, the word challenge isn't something like yippee. It's something closer to, I think this might be impossible. I don't know if I'm up to it. But we don't leave it just a challenge. We go on to amplify it with my biggest. Well, can you have something that's the biggest if you only have one? You can't, can you? So now subconsciously, what have you told yourself? Or if you're using this phrase with your team, our biggest challenge right now is, you're subconsciously transmitting, guess what? We've got challenges, folks. And I don't know if we're gonna make this one, right? But we don't stop there. We don't say the biggest challenge. We tend to say my biggest challenge or our biggest challenge. Well, guess what we've done? We've now made it part of our identity of who we are. Hi, Tina, I'm Meridith, and I have 2 eyes, I have a nose, I have a mouth, and this big frickin' challenge, right? So I walk into a room and someone maybe mentions an opportunity, but I identify myself, I have this challenge. I'm not gonna be able to do this, right? So we have limited ourselves by our language. And yet in that sentence, as powerful as those words are, the most powerful word in that sentence is a word that completely flies under the radar for virtually all of us. And if you take nothing from what we say today, take this. The most powerful word in that sentence is the word is. What? Is, because it's the present tense. The only time that we speak in the present tense is when we believe something is true with all capital letters. It is factual. In other words, if I'm talking to you back there and I'm like, surely you have to agree with me in this and we just can't change. I say, it is what it is, don't I? So everything that we say in the present tense to ourselves or to others becomes like programming code from which everything else is built upon. So if you want to change your results, your present tense statements must change from focusing on impossibilities to focusing on the I'm possibilities, especially if you're trying to motivate your team. Does that make sense? So as I sat there on that plane, flying to the place where my daughter lay fighting for her life, I realized that what I had to do was find the place where there is no bright side. Sound strange? Well, think about it. Because if you're trying to focus on the bright side, where's your focus really? The big dark side, right? You're just trying not to look at it. And let's go back to that, my biggest challenge. Because remember, I had said your mind has to believe it. Well, my mind believes there's a big frickin' challenge here. In case you didn't notice, your daughter was frickin' crushed by a boulder. I call that a challenge. So how do we get around that? Well, how about this? My biggest focus right now is finding a way to get my power back to help my daughter. Who thinks that sounds a little bit better? Right? How about this? My biggest commitment right now is finding a way to help my daughter. How's that? Is that more booyah, baby? Yeah. So today you have an opportunity, again, to decide who is it that you choose to be it. It's irrelevant who you were yesterday. You have not lived this moment yet today. What I would wager is that many of you truly do not know who you are. If I ask you right now, okay, make a list of how many things do you love or that you're passionate about, most people would get stuck around 5 or 7. We want to extract around 30 different things. Same thing for your skills. And especially we women are particularly guilty of this. We feel like we're being arrogant or pompous or that she thinks she's all that if we say, this is my superpower. But let me share with you something. When you are kindly, ruthlessly, compassionately able to claim your superpower, you ironically enough take all that judginess out of the picture because you allow other people to have their superpowers. There's plenty of superpower to go along and to go around. And guess what? When we take my epicness and combine it with yours and yours and yours and yours, the level of impact that we can create as a team, again, not to just do the minimum, not to just settle for good enough, but to say, again, I am showing up deliberately, not because I need to impress you, but because that is who I am. I wear a ring on my finger, not because I'm devoted to the man in my life, which I am, but this is a ring of commitment to myself, to my soulmate, saying, no one, much less me, is going to prevent me from waking up today and doing whatever I can to show up as that most epic version of myself. And oh, by the way, I'd love to do it with you, right? So the first part is to really start getting to know yourself. And that includes, newsflash, the icky, shameful, embarrassing parts of your story. Today, I would ask you to look at yourself maybe from your own real eyes and begin to realize who you intend to start showing up as. Those stories that maybe you've beaten yourself up over, those reasons, those maybe the thing that the person next to you in your office, in your team has really been bugging you. How important is that? What's really important to you? Are you going to shape what the experiences in your life mean in your epicness? Or are you going to allow these trivial experiences or these opportunity to grow experiences to define, i.e. limit you? I think one of the worst, saddest things that I see is when people come to the fork in the road and they look back and they realize that when they were in their 20s or 30s, they had a very specific idea of where they thought they would be 10, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And then one day they wake up and they look in the mirror and they go, oh my God, I'm not at all where I thought I would be. But guess what's worse? Looking in the mirror and saying, I'm exactly where I thought I would be, but I don't feel like I thought I would feel when I got here. Because what tends to happen in both of those paths is that some people will make a change and start saying, okay, who am I? This is when we get to the recalibrate step, the second step. First you identify, then you recalibrate, you obliterate the things that are getting in your way, making you play small, whatever it takes. And you get ready to unleash the most epic version of yourself, regardless of the boulders that either may already be in your life, may have been in your life, maybe you're freaking terrified are going to be in your life. Doesn't matter. You are that epic version of yourself. And what unfortunately happens is that some people lose hope. And they say, I'm just not gonna care. And you convince yourself, I don't even know what I like anymore. I don't like anything. And that's when you start maybe to feel regret. Or maybe you just become one of those crotchety, we've all seen them, bitter, I hate life, there's nothing good in this world sort of people. When a daughter like mine, who's 22 years old and was crushed by the boulder, would love to have had 70 years with a body that fulfills the dreams that she thought she had. What is your epic potential unique to you? Today is your opportunity to say, you know what? Younger self, I got you all wrong. Yeah, okay, we made sacrifices, but that frickin' choice that you made at a 7-year-old, are you frickin' kidding me? That was epic. What 7-year-old has to make that kind of choice, and yet you did? How many people here know the story of how they train a baby elephant? Awesome. So you correct me if I'm wrong. But so true or true, elephants are kind of on the big side, right? Oh, a few sizes bigger than our rubber chicken friend. So in many parts of the world, because of their size, their epicness is seen as they become like the construction vehicles, right? So they basically can knock down anything, yes? So think about it. If you have this creature that can knock down anything, and you are a mere human being who needs to keep this thing captive overnight when he can knock down the fences, a little bit of a natural problem there, right? So this is how they've figured this out. They take the elephants when they're little and they attach a collar to this elephant, and they attached the collar to a chain and the chain to a stake. Now this elephant is a baby. So this time when the elephant yanks and pulls, it's excruciating pain. So it doesn't take long for this baby elephant to go, you know what? This doesn't feel great. In fact, if I really want to survive this, I better stop pulling. And so the elephant grows and grows and grows. And so it's not uncommon to see a big, full-grown elephant with a teeny tiny collar attached to this magical stake that as soon as they're attached, oh my gosh, I better not move. So here's the thing. In a way, we're all like that baby elephant. We make brilliant choices to survive even when we're young. Brilliant, because sometimes there are some not so nice people that we face when we're young. They try, but they have fears. They've got their own thing. Not everybody is a perfect parent, if there is such a thing, right? So we are forced to make some tough choices and to give up some things that we might be pretty freaking resentful that we missed out on. Here's the opportunity. With that baby elephant, that was the best choice. That was brilliant choice at the time. The problem is only that the baby elephant, rather than categorizing this as one experience, one scenario, categorized this as a trend and said because it was true now, it will always be true. How many of us are inadvertently walking around with our own version of the baby elephant collar? Today's the day I invite you to look back and say, wow, I was pretty freaking awesome. I can be proud of myself. And I can write a letter to myself, that younger version, and say, you know what? You've served your time. Thank you. And I'm going to make a promise to you, younger version of myself. It will have been worth it. Because as of this moment, right here, right now, today, we are going to step forward being that epic version of ourselves. And that, to me, is a perfect combination of joie de vivre, the joy of life, and carpe diem, seize the day. So my question to you today, as we finish this up, is really, who do you want to be? Who do you demand that you are going to be? Last question. How are you going to define yourself? By the boulders that have left you scarred? Yes, there will be obstacles. There will be monsters. And yes, sometimes literally boulders. But I hope that thanks to hearing our story, that when life demands that you become the reluctant hero, that you will realize that that epicness that you've been seeking exists not in spite of these boulders, but thanks to that bolder version of you that these boulders can help you become. Because what if these boulders don't come to destroy us? What if they come to destroy the things that we have been allowing to keep us down? What if it's not in spite of these boulders in our lives that we succeed? It's thanks to these boulders that we learn just how high we can soar. 1, 2, 3, fire! Woo! All right. Woo! Thank you, everyone.